So, the purpose for the district in forming these RTI teams on campuses and within the district and having several different sessions in which we come together and are provided training on RTI is because the district has realized that there is a disconnect between the campuses, between the district, between teachers, and between parents as to what the perception of response to intervention really is. There's a perception that we don't do RTI correctly because we don't have a common language within the district around RTI. So, the purpose of coming together for these RTI meetings is to change our mindset. This is no longer going to be just a meeting. RTI doesn't mean a meeting anymore. It does not just mean a means to a referral. That doesn't mean that we will not be referring kids for evaluation. It's just going to look different. It's also going to possibly open up opportunities to streamline the process to a referral, which we will talk about in greater detail later on. The point of RTI and the point that we're going to make today is that we need to be focused on the specific interventions that we are providing to students so that they can adequately meet their expected gains in the classroom each year. And we do not have to have a meeting in order to do what's in the best interest of students. So the traditional model of RTI required a meeting on individual students to determine the next steps. If we had a concern about a student academically or behaviorally, we would come together, everybody in the committee would come together for a meeting, and we would talk about what the kid was struggling on and what we needed to do moving forward. And most of the time, that conversation revolved filling out paperwork to move towards testing. Many of the interventions were teacher created. If you had a student that was struggling, you would try to create an activity that could support that student. Or you may look to means such as Teacher Pay Teacher or Pinterest to try to find something that could support that student to become more successful in the classroom. The traditional RTI model also has the teacher being the one responsible for providing all of the interventions for his or her students. And it's utilized only as a pathway to the evaluation. So we would not begin providing those interventions unless we felt traditionally that we needed them to be tested for further support. That is the framework of the traditional RTI model. So we're moving towards the systems approach to RTI. And with that, intervention is provided based on screening and predetermined pathways, which we will talk about a little bit more. Interventions are research validated and prearranged. Students don't have to fail or qualify to receive intervention. If a student is struggling, then we have systems and interventions in place to support them so that we can scaffold the learning for them. And all staff are part of campus intervention implementation. It is not just the classroom teacher, it is all of the instructional staff and support teams that are working together to make sure that we have the tools necessary for our students to make adequate gains in the classroom. Okay, so this is the framework that has been provided in regards to the flowchart whenever we're looking through RTI. We will reference this a lot as we come to additional meetings on RTI, but for the primary purpose of today, we're going to look at, first we need to see how we know students are learning. So when we look at our Tier 1 benchmark instruction. And we look at reading, math, behavior, and attendance. So these are our benchmark students. And so then we're going to come over here. Is Tier 1 instruction effective for these students? Do 80 to 90% of the students make adequate progress in that? If they're already Tier 1 and they're continuing to make adequate progress, then we're going to come here to yes. And so for Tier 1 students not making adequate progress, we need to consider those Tier 2 interventions, or we need to initiate problem solving. We need to diagnose the problem. We need to have some intervention modification and some short-term goal setting. We'll talk about all of this more as we go through the process. And so then we'll go through in the same process for Tier 2 strategic intervention. How are we going to respond if those students are not successful? Then we're going to come here and we're going to have system level problem solving for the system. We're going to identify who. What is the instructional groups not making progress? Who are these particular students and why? Why are they not making that progress necessary? And these are conversations that we will have in our planning meetings, in our data meetings, in our red folder meetings. And so we're coming together as a team of educational leaders in the building to determine if they're not getting it, why? Let's work together to figure that out, because this doesn't rest solely on the teacher. The teacher knows those students best, but there are other people in this building who can work together to try to form the best determination of why those students may be struggling and what we can do to support them. And so as you go through, it's the same process for your Tier 3 interventions. And then we come here. Are there students that have not demonstrated adequate progress despite intensive, potentially long-term and individualized intervention? So then we have a comprehensive evaluation of the students. We have an intervention plan. And then we move forward for those Tier 3 students who are not making that adequate progress after we've provided all of these interventions that have been documented. Then at that point, we would move forward with a referral for that particular student. So as we stated, this year, everything is revolving around these 4 PLC questions. And that first PLC question being, what do we want students to learn? So we're focused on all students. Every single student in this building is part of the all. I know that there are some of those students that just really push our boundaries as educators and challenge us beyond where we thought that we could capably reach them within our potential, but they are still part of that all. And that's why we have to work together as a team. It is not on any individual person. We need to come together. And all of our students need to receive guaranteed and viable Tier 1 instruction. And our Tier 1 instruction takes place in the core. This is where we're providing our core instruction. The best schools don't focus on all of their energy on intervention programs. Instead, they focus on strong Tier 1 instruction and learning. This is what you guys do every day. You collaborate, you plan, you seek out ways to continue to provide quality Tier 1 instruction to your kids. The idea is that with quality Tier 1 instruction, fewer kids will need that Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention. In order for this to happen, though, we have to make that shift in regards to T-tests where the students are owning the learning. And so we have to be reflective each and every day on the balance of teacher talk versus student talk and creating that Tier 1 instruction that gives those students that ability to be owning the learning, to be doing most of the talking, because that is where the comprehension and that application takes place, is when they're the ones that are doing the discussing. They're the ones that are justifying their thinking. And so we have to make sure that we are the ones guiding that process for them. What does powerful Tier 1 instruction look like?